Hello, thank you for viewing this presentation which has been prepared instead of our usual opening of the Trinity House Chapel for Heritage Open Days 2020. We live in strange times at the moment, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic we have decided that it would be unsafe to open the building to visitors this year. Next year, 2021, we hope to be able to open our doors to our tours of the house and of course the chapel for Heritage Open Days. This is the fifth chapel that the Guild has had since 1369, when the Guild was officially formed. The previous chapel was in what is now our working entrance and offices in Trinity House Lane. The decision to open a marine school was made in 1785, and the school was opened on the 2nd of February 1787. In the following years, the Brethren needed a larger chapel to enable the boys from the school to attend, adding spiritual guidance to the academic and navigational instruction afforded by the school. The chapel was built between 1839 and 1842 by H.F. Lockwood, an architect from Bradford in West Yorkshire. Externally it was painted stucco with a hipped slate roof in the classical revival style. The rusticated east front has 4 giant Greek pilasters, entablature and a pediment. The central stained glass window is flanked by 8-panel double doors with overlights, all with pilastered surrounds and cornices. In front is a large sculpture of Oceanus reclining. This was by Thomas Earl and dated 1832. It was removed from the Trinity almshouses and resited here in 1934. The west front has a rusticated ground floor and central corniced portico with paired Greek pilasters flanking a pilastered door case with a pair of 8-panel doors and overlight. Above, a Diocletian window with moulded surround and keystone. The interior has a square central space with Corinthian pilasters, a dentelated cornice and a ribbed groin vault with a Diocletian window to north and south, each with a stained glass coat of arms. To the east, a coffered apse framed by Corinthian pilasters with a stained glass east window which is dated 1840 by M. Strangroom, flanked by Corinthian columns. On either side is a moulded door case and cornice ornamented with seahorses, each with a curved 6-panel door. At the west end, a coffered barrel vault with Diocletian window, flanked by 2 flat ceilings on Corinthian square columns. Under the vault is a panelled wooden gallery with 2 wooden columns and on either side a 12-pane sash. At the rear is a pair of 6-panel doors. The western entrance lobby has a wooden cantilever stair with a cast iron lotus balustrade. Fittings include an altar table from the former chapel, circa 1770, with a polygonal marble slab supported by a gilt eagle, by Sir William Chambers. The square oak pulpit was previously installed in the earlier chapel. The organ was built and installed in the Delapole Lodge of Freemasons in Porter Street, which was bombed in 1941. One of the honorary brethren rescued the organ and had it restored and installed here in this chapel. It is a fine example of a small organ by Foster and Andrews, a whole company of organ builders. It is listed on the National Pipe Organ Register, which records organs of sufficient national importance. The congregation are provided with box pews. There is on the south wall a monument to Thomas Ferries. Thomas Ferries originated from Glaisdale in North Yorkshire. Of farming stock, he became a shipmaster and a ship owner, becoming very wealthy. He was Mayor of Hull, Sheriff of Hull, and 3 times Warden of this guild. The Brethren had erected a wooden monument to Thomas Ferries in Holy Trinity Church, but as this suffered from age and rot, it was decided to commission Thomas Earl to sculpt a marble replacement. Earl made a plaster model of his intended monument for the approval of the Brethren, and shortly after his death his widow asked the Brethren if they would also like the plaster model. They accepted, and it was placed here in the chapel on the south wall. The marble monument is in the minster in the north transept. After the Reformation, Thomas Ferries bought the Carmelite estate from the Crown and bequeathed it to the Guild for them to establish a hospital for sick and infirm seafarers. He also erected a stone packhorse bridge over the River Esk in Glaisdale. One can see his initials T.F. carved into the keystone of the bridge. The bridge is known as the Beggar's Bridge. The first chapel may have been on the north side of the Guild Hall, where the present offices are, for this was the site of the chapel in the mid-18th century. In 1474, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, gave a great bell, which was hung in the following year. During the next 20 years, a considerable sum was spent on the chapel's adornment. It contained a statue of the Virgin and 2 of the Trinity, painted and gilt and housed in woodwork tabernacles, a carving of the head of St. John the Baptist, and several pictures, including one of St. Anne. The altar fittings were expensive, and there were stalls for the Brethren. Services were musical. The wages of singers appear from time to time, and an entry of 1521 refers to the setting up of an organ and to a payment to John Watson for his part in the virginals. In 1523, a new altar was bought in Flanders. A chaplain was paid, as a rule £1 10 a quarter, and had a house on the site. Another house on the site referred to is that called Le Guillotte, belonging to the schoolmaster. As far back as 1729, it had been agreed to pay a private schoolmaster £12 a year to teach navigation, arithmetic and writing to 12 children, each to be nominated by the board. Nothing seems to have come of this, but in 1785 it was decided to establish a marine school, and this was opened in 1787. There were 36 boys who stayed for 3 years, and then were apprenticed to a shipmaster for a period of between 5 and 7 years. The first master had a salary of £50. The boys were clothed by the house in blue cloth dress coat with tails and waistcoat, both with brass buttons, and trousers of white duck. The board was insistent that boys must stay the full 3 years, except in special cases. The original school building was in Trinity House Lane. The Guild has always been of a religious nature, even as far back as the mid-12th century, when the parishioners of the Holy Trinity cared for each other mutually. The church then was little more than a chapel of ease, the mother church being All Saints' Church in Hesel, a few miles to the west of the city. It was also about this time that the community of Carmelite friars petitioned Eleanor of Aquitaine for land to be granted to them within the walls of the town as it was then. Thus did the Carmelite estate come into being, and it has remained intact ever since. The Guild, being officially formed in 1369, then rented the southeastern corner of the estate from the friars for their Guild Hall. the present buildings of Trinity House being erected in the 18th century as almshouses and the offices and guild hall of the guild. Lastly, here in the chapel is a replica ship's bell of the Atlantic Conveyor, lost to an Exocet strike in the Falklands conflict in 1982. Her master was Captain Ian North, an old boy of the school. His family and Cunard wanted some memorial for Captain North, and they decided on a replica of the ship's bell. They asked if we would be custodians of this memorial, and he, Captain North being an old boy of the school, we were pleased to accept. The bell is rung annually in Hull Minster at the Falklands service. Thank you for listening and your interest in our chapel. We hope that next year, or at some other time in the future when all is back to normal, you will come and visit the chapel, either on Heritage Open Days or as one of our conducted tours of the house. The Old Boys Association erected this tablet on the last remaining section of the school wall attached to the chapel. Please visit the Hull Trinity House and Hull Box Office websites, where any resumption of our monthly public tours of the house and chapel will be advertised once we are able to open again. Thank you.